All right, so we're at least a minute past the hour, so I think we're going to get this going. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to the first product success session of the year. The theme today is prioritize problems and avoid the build trap with ProdPad. Here's my next slide. There we go. So what are product success sessions? We're going to be focusing on different areas each month that we do them. We're going to discuss setup and implementation and share best practices and functionality for success with ProdPad. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. Or if you want to, you can use the raise your hand option. Now, we are going to have a bit of a different success session today. We're actually going to discuss amongst each other, or actually Emma and Wes are going to discuss with each other, and I'm going to moderate, which is going to be really interesting. So we're going to get the answer to the question, what happens when you throw a bunch of product managers in a room? With that said, if you want to participate and join the conversation, feel free to raise your hand. That's okay. You can go to the next one, Emma. So who's talking to you? Anyway, my name is Andrea. And I was also PM at some point in my life. I was the first ProdPad employee. And I am the resident ProdPad Pro and take care of product growth, education, and community. And as I said, with me today are Emma and Wes, who will introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I've just realised I haven't changed my surname and I've been married a year now, so that's not great. But I'm part of the customer. I know. I'm part of the customer success team at ProdPad. Like Andrea I was also a product manager in a previous life. I worked at a learn tech company where I actually implemented ProdPad to set up product management processes there. So I've kind of been in your shoes, and now I help product teams to implement ProdPad successfully. Before all of that, I was actually a project manager for my sins, so I'm still kind of getting over that. And over to Wes.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I joined the former product manager club with Andrea and Emma. I was previously a consultant in product management at a consultancy called Pivotal Labs. I was also a product manager at some startups and enterprises in healthcare. I'm the US business lead for ProdPad, so I was actually the first ProdPad team member hired in the US. And I currently support existing customers in the North America time zones doing very similar things that Emma does with the rest of our customer base, as well as prospective customers doing demos and selling.
So as Andrea said, we're going to do things slightly differently this time on the success session. So previous times we've kind of been focusing quite heavily on how to use ProdPad to implement certain processes, but today we wanted to do something slightly different and focus on how to help you to create focus your roadmap around problems rather than features. So Wes and I are going to be sharing a bit about different things we've learned through working with lots of our customers, and hopefully give you something to go away and practically be able to change your roadmap and help to become more problem focused as well, and avoid the build trap. So the three things we're going to cover today are the common challenges that we see when customers are transitioning from more of a feature focused approach to road mapping and planning to being more problem focused, the benefits of focusing on problems in your roadmap as opposed to focusing on features. And then, as I say, we're going to help you to think about how to reframe your roadmap around problems and give you some tips there. So poll time. Do you phrase your roadmap initiatives as problems at the moment? If Andrea could do the honors. Cool. So hopefully you can see there's just a couple of questions about how you're phrasing your roadmap initiatives at the moment, and also importantly, what internal support is there for you to move to more of a problem-focused approach for your road mapping? We'll maybe give you just a couple more seconds to do that.
Yeah, the results are coming in. I do apologize. I didn't launch the first poll around the current role, so I may trigger that one just after this one to get some of the responses. Cool. But the answers are coming in, and for the first one, it's looking okay, that completely switched as I was talking. I was going to say, it looks like the answer to do you phrase your roadmap initiatives as problems or only go as high as feature level? It is now a tie between mix of problems and features and still only features, but working on problems. This is really interesting. It's like, let's see who gets there first. It was split 50-50. It is now 47% for mix of problems and features and 42% for still features. And we have 11% for always phrase as problems. And nobody answered my stakeholders require feature level roadmaps. So excellent, everybody. I like hearing that. For the second question, what internal support is there for a move to problem-focused strategic road mapping? We have 50% of people said use with my teams and try to advocate for cultural shift across business. 35% said I am trying to use my team, but use with my team, not use my team, but often have to create other types of roadmaps as well. And 15% said supported by the organization as a whole.
Brilliant. Well, that's a nice spread there, and like I say, we're going to try and help you to think about how you can rephrase your roadmaps around problems rather than features, and we'll also talk through some of the benefits as well. So for those of you that are having to create like different documents at the moment, how to help communicate that the benefits of focusing on problems when it comes to thinking strategically about your products. So we thought it'd be useful at the start just to kind of share with you some of the common challenges we see. I think when we speak with customers, I mean, often, you know, you think that your problems are unique and that you know, you're the only one struggling with them, and it's not the case. A lot of product teams are all trying to solve the same problems, and there's a lot we can share and learn from each other. So these are the common challenges that we see, and we'll touch on some of these today and how you can shift them. So common one we see is actually like not enough time being spent on discovery. So features end up being planned and decided that they're going to go ahead before any validation is done. So obviously this can lead to risks around all sorts of debt, tech debt, feature debt, spending a lot of time on things that aren't actually going to be used by customers. So by focusing on problems, this would help you to reduce that financial risk that your business is taking on. There's also commonly issues with managing expectations around delivery. So, you know, sales colleagues may be selling things that don't exist yet. And then you've got to manage expectations with both customers and internal stakeholders around the delivery side. We'll come on a little bit later about maybe why this is difficult, especially with different things being called roadmaps. Stakeholders as well wanting to see dates against features. I mean, actually in that poll, no one said that it was required by business, and maybe this is less problem for you folks, but it's definitely something we see is that stakeholders want to see dates against features, and there's a common misunderstanding as to whether that comes from a strategic roadmap, or actually is that a separate document, more of like a release plan delivery planning emphasis. Another one we see, particularly when customers are coming to us and trying to transition from an existing, like mature product, and they've already got a roadmap that's based around features, it's how to reword that roadmap into problems. And this is something that we'll heavily focus on today, is how to help you to actually restructure and reframe that feature roadmap into one that's focused about the problems that you're trying to solve as a business. And typically, another thing that is a slight curveball is just how to show business as usual and things that you have to do. Common one we get asked is around bugs, for example. Should I put bugs in my roadmap? Should bugs just go straight into your delivery tool? And also other more maybe like foundational work, more of the like performance stuff like that. And in that vein, having new products that you're going to create or re-platforming products. So if you've already got an existing product and you're having to like restructure it, re-platform it, how can you create a strategic roadmap around that when you kind of you've already got an existing feature set? So like, how do you turn those into problems and help to prioritize your roadmap that way? Obviously, that's slightly different to new products where, the world's your oyster. How do you even decide what problems you're going to focus on? But obviously for both, understanding the problems you're trying to solve is still key. And something else we'll touch on later as well is building for internal stakeholders. We have quite a lot of customers at ProdPad that are product teams for internal products. And I know that that's something that Wes is going to talk a bit to later. So we often get questions about, if you're looking at implementing a tool, for example, or making changes with MS products or whatever it might be, how do you actually frame those around problems and make sure you're prioritizing your work effectively? Before I move on to the next poll, Wes, do you have any other comments on the common challenges that we see here?
Yeah, I think that some of these are very interconnected. So these are just some of the things that we have seen, more specific examples from some of our customers, but just understanding that there are some, hopefully we will cover in today's session kind of strategies for addressing more than just one of these, like that by understanding the way to rephrase and reframe features into problems will help solve a lot of these.
So the next poll, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind doing the honors, is just trying to gauge from who we've got on the call today, what challenges do you face out of the ones that we just talked through? You should be able to select more than one. So so please do if you're affected by more than one of these.
Hopefully a select all option isn't necessary.
All right, so votes are coming in. Luckily, you are right. There isn't a need for select all, but very close. Seems everyone so far is okay with building for internal stakeholders. That's not an issue. However, we're pretty well spread, like equally spread out across the board on all the other issues, which is quite interesting. So they're fairly equal. I would say probably the lowest right now is new or replatforming products, but the rest are hanging steady between 50 and 60%.
Interesting. So yeah, so like Wes said, we'll cover most of these today. Obviously, if you've got a burning question about one of these particular challenges and you don't feel like we quite give you a good enough answer to help you when you leave the webinar today, then do pop any questions in the Q&A or the chat and we'll deal with them at the end and try and help you as best we can. So I think one of the things that actually connects all of these challenges together, and something that I've seen across all sorts of product teams, large and small, all sorts of sizes and sort of makeup, is the reason that this is so difficult and moving and creating more of a strategic roadmap as opposed to more of like a feature focused, more delivery plan based, is because the term roadmap is actually used very widely in the product management world and circles, in all sorts of like blog posts, articles, other webinars and podcasts. Everyone uses the term roadmap, and to me, slightly different things. Often when it's like a different type of document that is required, roadmap can be used for a strategic roadmap like we're going to talk about today, but it can also be described, other people will ask for a roadmap when they mean a delivery plan or something that's looking at objectives. So it can be quite hard to actually get agreement and alignment within the business about what are you even talking about when someone's asking for a roadmap or when you're saying you're going to create a roadmap, trying to create that alignment. So because there's this confusion and people ask for a roadmap when they mean lots of different things, this then causes confusion and difficulties then when you're trying to create a roadmap that is more strategic, because when you're creating that sort of roadmap, you're focusing on tackling the right problems for your business, making sure that everyone understands the direction that the product is heading in, whereas the other person that's listening to you might have a completely different document in their head. So it's really important to make sure that everyone's on the same page as to what you mean in the business is when you're talking about a roadmap, that it's a strategic one, it's going to be problem focused. But that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be other documents that you might have that are maybe complementary and work alongside that strategic roadmap, like, for example, a delivery plan. So I thought I might show you some common examples of different roadmaps that we see from customers as they move towards this more problem-focused, outcome-focused approach using ProdPad. These are all examples that I've just found from the interwebs, so they're not actual real life versions, but they hopefully give you an indication, and some might seem familiar. So the first type that we see often when we're doing like roadmap clinics or we're onboarding customers and we're sense checking the roadmap is this kind of roadmap, which is, it has themes and then there's like features within it, and those features are sort of bucketed against those themes. Normally, like in this example, those themes are actually more at the objective level. So while this is like a really good important start, you're making sure that you've documented the objectives for your product and you're sort of attaching those features that are going to hopefully hit those objectives. It skips that problem focus. There's nowhere in here that shows actually what problem you're trying to fix, apart from maybe the 75% faster mobile app. So that it kind of gives the indication that you're starting to move towards that approach, but it just misses out the problem level. And then obviously by not having the problems in this kind of format, you're not necessarily going to focus on solving the right problems in the best way for your business. And it also risks not actually exploring all the possible solutions to a problem. So this kind of misses out the discovery aspect. How did you decide that we were going to create new user templates, for example, which is something that's really powerful by having that in your strategic roadmap in ProdPad, because everyone can understand exactly why you are working on the things that you are. But this is a good step because you've got your objectives being defined and communicated. So this is a good step to start getting the right things within ProdPad. Another common one is really long slide decks or presentations. Quite often there's like one slide per initiative, maybe roadmap initiative, or it's often just different cuts of the same information. Often I think with roadmaps trying to be presented in PowerPoints, it's actually when you're trying to communicate lots of different pieces of information to different stakeholders, but all in the same document. So this normally is when like you've got management teams or boards that are asking for extensive levels of detail, or you're trying to just cover your bases. You're trying to make sure that you've got your themes, your objectives, but also the problems you're trying to solve, and then your delivery plan as well. Sometimes that delivery plan might stretch a little bit, start crystal balling the future of what your product's going to deliver. And so while separately many of these views are often necessary, it's not a clear, simple approach when you're trying to align all of the stakeholders in your business around the direction of the product and the problems you're trying to solve. It's very hard to distill from these different views the strategic problems you're trying to solve, and especially for other colleagues in sales, support, success, to be able to do what they need to do in their roles and empower them to understand the direction of the product and sell what they need to sell and support the customers in the right way. This isn't a great way of creating a self-serve environment. But again, because you've got all of the different components, we can often help you to piece all of those pieces together into ProdPad so that you can have a nice, clear, strategic roadmap in ProdPad that's easily updatable. You don't have to keep creating different versions like you do in PowerPoint, but you can also make it really easily accessible as well. So often this is more on the reporting side. And then the final one that we often see is around a more detailed delivery plan. So normally when customers show us this type of roadmap that they used to be doing, this is more complementary to your roadmap. So in the outcome focused roadmap in ProdPad, you've got now, next, and later. Normally it's only the items in the now column that you're going to be able to create a delivery plan against. They're going to be the ones that have gone through discovery, be validated, and they've got all of the scope and detail in them so that you're able to better estimate when they're going to be delivered. So if that's only the items in the now column, that shows you that the rest of the roadmap in ProdPad is more strategic, higher level to help you share and prioritize the direction the product is heading in, rather than a more detailed project plan, which is close to the now time. What's missing from this type of document is being able to show the upcoming focus. So this is obviously now, but what are the next priorities for business? What's the strategic direction that the product is heading in? What are the problems that are being solved? By having problems in your roadmap as opposed to just the features, that really empowers the sales teams and support teams to better serve the customers by helping to discuss more feedback around the problems you're solving, rather than just like feature requests, which is really helpful in helping then the product team to validate the right ideas to move forward. So yeah, and the other thing on the release plans is they tend to not really have the objective side in. So whereas the first one, where we've got more themed roadmaps, they do tend to have the objectives. Delivery plans more often than not don't have that angle in it either. So when you're mapping this to ProdPad, this would normally be all at the ideas level. Wes, did you have any other comments on these common roadmaps that we see before we move on to the poll question?
The one comment that I wanted to make was I hope that the audience just takes this as more of a comfort in that there are struggles across the board, that people do road mapping differently, and that just because we're not necessarily following the right best practice, it doesn't mean we can't get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll move on to give you more tips as to how you can build on these documents into ProdPad as well. So the next poll, please, if Andrew would do the honours, before I hand over to Wes for the next section, is what does your current roadmap look like? So we've kind of listed out the different examples that we shared today, and then also there's the option of probably more of a problem-focused roadmap already. So it'd be interesting to see at what point you're at and what are the common roadmaps that you're currently using. I did make this multiple choice as well, because as I said, and as I said as well, you know, we see different versions of these, and all these different types of documents are intended to meet different needs. So it may well be that you're using quite a few of these at the moment.
All right, it looks like everybody has voted almost. So 63.43% have said themed features. 32% strategic roadmap focused on problems. 21% use PowerPoint. 16% have a delivery plan, and 5% have other. I'd love to hear who other is.
Yeah, definitely. If you're happy to share in the chat what kind of documents you're creating, that would be really, really useful to know. The other thing, just quickly to say before I hand over to Wes, is as we move through this webinar, we'll also obviously give you some tips on how to be more problem focused. If you have any feedback on how ProdPad can support you better in getting the information that you need in there, please do either feel free to add it in the chat, or there's our feedback portal on our website. We're always looking at how we can improve ProdPad for our customers. So this would be an opportune moment to share your feedback on that. And with that, I'll hand over to Wes.
Right before we get started, sorry to interrupt, other was we're trying to move to a more problem-oriented and focused approach.
Cool. That's great.
Kudos. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a process to get there. It's not something that happens overnight, especially if you start with a feature-based roadmap. And I think one of the biggest, the crux of the problems with a feature-based roadmap is they don't communicate why. And I think that is the core role and responsibility for a product manager, is to be able to identify and communicate the why to everyone that's up and down the hierarchy. And this is actually one of my favorite quotes that I think it sums up a lot of the challenges or the reasons for problem-focused roadmap, which is that a perfectly cooked steak is worthless to a vegetarian. So John Cutler quoted this, and I use it often to identify that we're great at coming up with innovative and creative solutions. You know, there's a lot of cookware and pots and pans that can help you cook a steak to perfection. But if that's the problem you choose to solve for the vegetarian, you've wasted that effort. So the other kind of roadmaps that Emma went through don't really help you identify and solve the right problem. It just says, here are solutions to some problems. So ideally, a strategic roadmap used strategically shows you the direction, as Emma said, where your product's heading in. And then with looking further, the outcomes, you have more uncertainty. So that's where actually focusing on problems becomes even more beneficial, because you're not necessarily certain about how you're going to solve that problem, but more that you've identified a problem and you're validating that it truly is impactful to your customer or your business. So let's go through some of the different reasons why this is important. So this is ultimately to help you achieve business outcomes, and achieve them faster, right? Ultimately, you will get there, likely that you will solve some of those business problems. But if you are very clear about the ones you're trying to solve next and which priority they're in, you can get there even faster. So it helps you review all potential solutions to problems. If you have a feature-based roadmap that has a solution as a roadmap card, what other solutions did you consider that you deprioritized or didn't put on the roadmap? By actually focusing on the problem, you can actually, like in ProdPad, you can lay out all of the different ideas to solve a problem. We'll get into that in a second. You can prioritize the work to better spend your time focused on meeting business and customer needs, as opposed to wasting development effort and time on building things that solve the wrong problem. You reduce risk as a problem because it naturally leads you to spend more time on discovery to make sure that you've identified that, oh, vegetarians aren't having this problem, so we should solve something different. And then lastly, it really helps you avoid or actually manage these opinion-based decisions, which we call the hippo effect, the highest paid person's opinion. So it's really being driven by the impact of data and problems instead of someone who has an idea for a feature. So if you're following the lean principles, there's this concept of a build, measure, learn loop. Typically, that's how it's referenced, but I actually think that starting with the learn is where teams find the most success, really. So starting with learning about the context that your users have, learning about the problems they experience, and not just starting with, oh, let's build something and measure it, because you might be building something in the wrong area completely. So ideally, teams are working towards going through this cycle much faster. So that's the concept of being lean and building small, measuring it, and then learning from it. But prioritizing problems actually helps you focus a little bit more on the learning and some also about the measurement bit. Like, did we actually solve this problem? So that happens maybe in the prototyping phase before you invest development resources, or it can happen after you ship something and then actually measure success. So ProdPad has multiple functionality that will help support that. So this is kind of like looking at from a holistic process. This is kind of a generic product management process. Different companies are going to be at different stages of maturity in each stages of them. But as you see, problems is really central to this process. So identify outcomes, goals that you want to reach and achieve, and then you can build in your key results for that. But starting from that, and ask yourself, if in order to achieve this outcome, what might be preventing us from getting there? What problems might impede those outcomes? And that can start to highlight some of the areas that that you have. And then also ask yourself, what problems of those that we've kind of brainstormed, what problems are the most impactful? And then you can start to ideate on how you might solve those problems, and then measuring how well those solutions solve the problems. And on the lower, this is in our the glossary article on our help center, so you can access this image, but it also highlights the different areas of ProdPad that map to some of these. But ultimately, it's centered on problems, and then also loops back to, once you've delivered something, learn and iterate on that feedback. And one other point is that reminder that problems aren't just customer focused. So oftentimes we assume that being problem focused means the problems our customers have, but it could also be business focused as well. And that's where the strategic roadmap comes into play and helps support that, and also applies to those internal product development challenges. So in ProdPad, this is a hierarchy. So it starts with the product line, a grouping of products, and then it focuses on objectives that you're trying to solve. Like that was the left of the previous slide, and the key results. And then the initiatives fall under that. So if you think about it, your ultimate objective is to increase the business outcomes and also the customer outcomes. And then initiatives should be, what are opportunities we have to address or to reach those outcomes, or problems that are impeding us from getting to those outcomes? So that's where if that initiative is focused on problems, you can tie that into the various objectives. And ProdPad roadmaps make it easy to put those objectives on each roadmap card. And then ideas underneath that are all of the different ways to solve those potential problems or opportunities. Teresa Torres has the opportunity solution tree, which starts with the objective at the top, and then has the opportunities or problems at the initiative level, and then her solutions map to our ideas. And we have a blog post about how to use the opportunity solution tree with ProdPad. And then getting back to the why is this idea even important, that supports the why by supporting it with customer feedback. And hopefully that feedback is not just a customer request or a demand, but really an understanding of the feedback from that customer on why it's a problem or how impactful that problem is to them. So this kind of helps you map from top down from your business objectives, or even starting from your customer feedback, to bubble up problems from a bottom-up perspective as well. So like I said, the why is really important to be able to communicate, and a feature-based roadmap struggles to communicate that, not effectively. And so that's where the lean kind of now, next, later outcome-focused roadmap helps us do that. But to really do that, the roadmap cards or the initiatives should be phrased as problems. For example, on the left, can we help users understand their data with more useful exports? So this is there's some lack of the ability to really understand how to utilize their data without having exports. So rather than just saying, let's allow users to export their data, it really emphasizes there's a problem to be solved there. And then in the middle column, like the ideas underneath each initiative are representative of potential experiments and solutions to that problem. So let's look at ways that we could launch some of these ideas and measure, did it solve that problem? And if it did, we don't need to do all of the other ideas that are on that card, but they can be prioritized within each problem. And then the objectives, of course, is on every card to identify what are those product specific and portfolio or company level goals that we expect to improve if we truly solve that problem. And I'm going to say one more thing about prioritizing based on problems, not features. It can be done by using the impact and effort matrix on each card. So you can see, right, Emma's pointing to it, that on the lower left of each card, you have the impact versus effort chart of that individual card or initiative. So that says, okay, what is the impact of solving this problem for the customer and the business? And then what is the relative level of effort across technical, design, business, all of those, that level of effort to get this initiative completed or to even address this problem. So that helps describe why the current initiatives in the now column are prioritized now versus others that might come later. And then lastly, you might be asking, well, our customers are only internal folks in the company. Do we really need to change our roadmap to focus on problems? Because we already know what we need to do. Well, we have like Emma alluded to, we have a number of customers who do this. And one of our large customers had more than 10,000 employees in financial services. We were working with the head of product. They were building mostly internal products. They were also starting to build some external offerings. But there's some quotes that we got in an interview with this head of product. Said they used to put together lengthy business cases. So this is like the PowerPoints to get funding. And then they would pass those requirements over rather than taking this product or problem focused approach. Now remember, this is still for internal products. And then also, they had to work out the roles and responsibilities and a mindset shift from stakeholders or the end users just feeding over requirements that get documented rather than truly understanding the problems and challenges and how to solve. So they're seeing the use of ProdPad to be a big differentiator there. And then the conversations really changed in a positive way because people could see the value being delivered to the business rather than just costs and behind things that are behind schedule. So you shift the conversation to, are we really change agents for this business? Are we creating value for both our customers and for our business by solving their problems? Or are we just worried about, like, did we hit our deadline and how much did it cost us? So good things to keep in mind. And I'm going to hand that back over to Emma, but I know there were a couple of comments or questions. Do we want to get to those at the end, Andrea?
I don't know. It's up to you.
Okay.
We can take them now. Seeing as they're probably relevant to the stuff we just discussed.
Cool. So the first question is in regards to the hierarchy image that you shared a few slides ago, where you have the portfolio, product line, product, roadmap, ideas, feedback, etc. It's like I designed it. So the question is, why is product line the highest level in the pyramid when we want to focus on the problem and the objectives first?
That's a good question. And it's more, the product line and product is more about information or organization in ProdPad. So it's how do you tie objectives and problems to individual products or groupings of products. So sometimes in ProdPad, a product might represent a value stream that a team is working towards. And so each value stream could be a separate product that are in ProdPad. And so those objectives are likely going to be different. I think previously monetization, right, was one of the ones on an example roadmap Emma shared. That might be a value stream that you're focusing on. And then, so the product line and products are really more about data organization of ProdPad, and then objectives, key results, initiatives, and everything fall underneath that to emphasize. Since those go on the roadmap cards, that really helps strategically communicate.
Yeah, I think when we say hierarchy, we're not talking about the importance of things. It's more about just how things are structured within ProdPad.
Yeah, good point.
Cool. We have another question around feedback. I don't know if you want to take it now or perhaps leave that one for the end.
Maybe let's do that one now, and then we'll move on to the next section and take any more at the end.
Excellent. So the question is, users naturally frame their feedback as solutions, and that can lead to what actually may sound like a feature request instead of a piece of feedback. Do you have any suggestions on how to fix this? Have you seen any success with trying to encourage users to frame their thoughts as problems?
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is something Andrea and well, both Andrea and I have written and talk a lot about. So there is a blog on our well, there's a couple of blogs written by both Andrea and me on our blog that you can take a look at. I think just a couple of tips on this. First of all, don't call them feature requests. How you frame how you're asking for feedback will generally frame how you're going to hear the feedback. So often something that I did as a product manager and something that we always have done at ProdPad is just talking about feedback as it is, as feedback, and trying to have a conversation with customers about what problems they're trying to solve. You know, if they phrase it like a feature request and a solution, which, you know, I'm guilty of as well. When I ask HubSpot for something, I normally ask for exactly what I think I want. It's how to tease out of them, actually, okay, you say you want this button, or you say you want this type of report. Why do you want this type of report? And helping to feed into the product team then exactly what the problems are, so you can find maybe even a better solution that's going to be more cost effective for the business and still meet their need. That obviously the customer doesn't have the same information that you do as a product team about how you can build stuff and things like that. So I mean, that would be the first suggestion. Maybe we can come back to that at the end, but I think definitely it's all about framing it. And also I think have empathy for your customers. They aren't, I mean, luckily for us at ProdPad, our customers are product people, but for most of people that won't be the case. So just hear them out and act as a coach and try and tease out of them what is the problem. There's a previous product success session we did that was about managing feedback and creating a process around that. So there's also some tips in there about how to maybe manage that and build that into your process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I allowed to add anything to that, or are we moving on?
No, go for it, Andrea. Yeah, go for it.
So just while it's fresh in my mind, one thing you might want to do in ProdPad is perhaps use the feedback portal, because it is very discovery focused. So yes, you do still have the opportunity to ask those open-ended questions like, what is your feedback? But if you want to make it more precise and kind of drive the user to have to tell you why, the portal actually focuses on that. So you can publish an idea on the portal, and then I think our example placeholder is tell us why you would want this. So then it gets the user to have to think about, you know, why are they actually asking for this? A really good point that that Emma just made, which I actually tweeted about this morning, is empathy. And I don't know if that prompted you to say that or not. But if you take a step back and realize that, I mean, and like you said, I'm guilty of that too, is when you're really frustrated, even ourselves as product managers, you'll jump to saying, I want the solution, because it's really hard sometimes to just take a step back and even ask yourself, well, what problem is it that I'm trying to even describe? And as users, or rather as product managers, it's your job to help the user, I don't know, fight through that or work through that. Is probably the correct wording. But keep asking the questions, you know, and why this and why this and why this, until you get, you know, to the actual problem. Because it's, you know, when you're frustrated and you're not having a particularly good day, you're just so hyper focused on what's frustrating you at that point that it's really difficult to take that step back. So I think the portal is very perfectly geared towards that discovery and making that easier.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at an example and break that down and try and map that to the different areas of ProdPad. I tried to use a quite wide ranging high level example. So we're going to look at the example of, we want to overhaul our UI. So hopefully, even if you manage physical products, you've used websites, you know what a user interface is and what maybe a company might be looking to achieve by overhauling it. So if we think about in this example, we're wanting to overhaul our UI, but we need to understand why we're wanting to overhaul UI. What was the decision? What were the discussions that were had internally that made someone go, I know what, we'll change our whole UI to make it better or easier or whatever. So our why in this example is that we want to reduce our time to conversion. So new trialists, new leads that are coming in, we want to reduce that time to conversion, and we think that changing the UI can contribute to this. With this, our why here is the business objective we're trying to achieve. So this is something we can measure. So by the initiative we work on and the ideas, we can measure these metrics of how long does it take now, benchmark it, and later on we can see based on the initiative we did we actually manage to reduce that time to conversion, which could even, this objective isn't necessarily going to be just related to the UI, it could be related to all sorts of things, website changes, sales, marketing efforts, it could be a whole bunch of things. And what is the problem we're trying to solve as part of our work in overhauling our UI? Well, the specific problem, one of them, is how can website users intuitively find what they're searching for? With this level, this would be mapped to your initiative. It's phrased as a problem very nicely. If you ever take a look at our public roadmap, which is on our website, you'll see that we phrase all of our initiatives as questions. That can be really helpful. Sometimes it's a bit jarring for people to move to, but it's actually a really good way of getting you to actually think about the problem you're trying to solve when you're framing it as a question. I would say, I don't know if Wes agrees with this, but I would say this is the biggest barrier or problem to overcome when you're moving to a strategic roadmap that's focused more on problems and outcomes. One way of transitioning, if the phrasing is like a bit too big of a jump, so say if you put questions on a strategic roadmap, your management is just going to be like, what is this? Something else you can do is like a bit of an interim as you start to embed these more outcome focused approaches, is to break it down, break that overhaul UI problem down into like different phases. So it might be that phase 1 is about looking at the website or the search, for example. So you might have phase 1 being around improving search. Phase 2 might be around the homepage, or you might have it as just simply phrased as like, we're going to look at improving the search UI, and then we're going to look at improving the homepage UI. That, of course, doesn't get you that extra level of getting the problem in. It still doesn't actually tell you what problem you're trying to solve by improving the homepage or search UI, but it's certainly a first step if you are struggling to get that problem in. Just making sure you're breaking down them into phases. The thing you want to avoid is, and we'll come on to this, so I probably shouldn't go into too much detail, but you want to avoid cards staying in one place in the roadmap for too long. So like Wes mentioned, you're looking to build, measure, learn in this case. So if you have a roadmap initiative that's staying in the now column for 6 to 9 months, you're not learning, you're not going to be iterating quick enough. But I'll come on to that later. Yes, so that is at your initiative level. And then what are you going to do to try and solve this problem? Well, for helping customers to intuitively search for what they're looking for on the website, one thing we could do is add a search bar to the homepage. This is just one possible solution. There's going to be lots of different solutions to help customers intuitively search for what they need on the website. This is just one of them. So in that case, that maps to your idea, because this is how you're going to try and solve that problem, which is highlighted at the initiative level. And so this is your idea that's going to be how you're going to try and solve that. There may well be other experiments or work you're going to do which may also solve that problem. And as Wes mentioned earlier as well, there might be ideas that as that initiative is prioritized through later, next to now, there may be other ideas along the way that become paused. Maybe they're actually going to be too costly. There's not enough evidence that's going to be a useful thing to spend your time on right now. So you can also show that as well through your workflow. So I jumped a little bit ahead, so I've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but here's my top tips for getting those roadmap initiatives at the right level. So if your roadmap initiatives in ProdPad only have one idea, so you've got one roadmap card to one idea, it's too granular. Probably in that case, you've already got a feature roadmap and you're just trying to use ProdPad in the same way. You're gonna see some friction there. You're probably gonna want to do number 2, which is you're gonna want to push those roadmap initiatives to Jira. Again, that shows that it's too granular. You're missing that problem level. You're missing that value level. So each roadmap initiative should have multiple ideas. So 2 or more ideas on that initiative.
And to be clear, in ProdPad, roadmap cards cannot be pushed to the development tool.
Yes.
That's pushed at the idea level. So we couldn't even do it if you wanted to.
No, exactly. And that's obviously intentional, because the roadmap initiative is about the problem that you're trying to solve. It's more at the strategic level, whereas the ideas are the execution level. That's the stuff you want to send across to Jira. The third point on there, which is one that I obviously already touched on, I got ahead of myself. But if you are looking at this and thinking, I've got this roadmap initiative in the now column, and it's going to be in there for like 6 to 9 months, maybe like 2 years, that is too high level. You need to break it down further so that you're better able to measure success, and you're better able to do that lean build, measure, learn approach. So think about how you can phase that initiative out. If it's high level, like changing your UI or implementing reporting, whatever it might be, if it looks like it's going to, it's a chunky one, and you just want to be like, Emma, this is going to stay in here forever, why would I do that? Think about how you can break that down further. And one tip to always bear in mind, this is Wes, I believe you had this, which was a good one, is at the feature level is asking why, and at the objective level you're asking how. So something to help you to try and map these things across.
Emma, one comment on number 3, just to like communicate what we do at ProdPad. I think we will take an initiative that's in our now column, and especially on the customer team's roadmap, and say, this has been here for a while, let's duplicate this roadmap initiative, and then take some of the ideas that we haven't gotten to yet or have been, our lower priority, put those on the duplicate card, and then we can start measuring how the things we have done actually solve that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes when we're used to working quite like a projecty approach, and you're used to your road mapping document being quite static, it can feel like a bit scary to just be able to change your roadmap. But like Jana always talks about the roadmap being a prototype for your strategy, it's meant to change, it's going to change, you're going to hear new information all the time. So don't be afraid to mix it up if it's not working for you and it's not actually reflecting the state of play. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a go ourselves. There should be a poll question, Andrea, that you can put up, and basically we're going to look at these 3 examples, and you're going to tell us if you think it's an objective, an initiative, or an idea. And hopefully, given that we've just gone through, it'll be a bit clearer as to which is which. And I would also say we're nearing the end now, and we might have a couple of minutes spare. If you have your own initiatives that you're confused and you're thinking right now, well, I don't know where to place, this X project we're going to be doing, feel free to add it in the chat, and we can try and help you place it. With this activity, we have made it quite straightforward. It's not always straightforward. It sometimes does take a lot of, as Wes well knows, when we're talking with customers, it's not always straightforward. Sometimes the thing you're talking with us about could be an objective, it could be an initiative, it could be an idea, and it's just mapping, working together to map it at the right level.
Yeah, and this might be a good opportunity to plug the roadmap clinics that we offer, because while we realize that these are very oversimplified examples, and there are complex challenges that you face, feel free to book one of our free roadmap clinics, and someone from the success team or anyone on our team can actually help you kind of reframe them.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea, do we have any answers through yet?
We do, yes. So for the first one, implement Google SSO. 11 people said idea. 1 person said initiative, and 1 person said objective.
Cool.
Do you want to say what the right answer is?
Yeah, so for this one, I would definitely say it's an idea. It is a solution you're going to implement. I could see maybe sometimes it could maybe be an initiative if you're looking at how to like improve your login experience by offering different SSO solutions. Potentially that could be an initiative, but this one was definitely intended to be, this is an idea we're going to execute on. It's a solution.
Yeah, I would say that it's an idea, or sorry, it's an initiative if you've actually gone through the discovery process and you know exactly what it is that you're doing. However, it's still lacking information.
Yeah.
So in that sense, It might be the title of the initiative.
Yes, yeah.
But it still needs a little bit more. For the second one, we have how might we help our users report on team activity? 77% said initiative. Well done. 8% said idea, and 15% said objective.
Cool. So I think so. Obviously, the clue with this one was the fact that it was phrased as a question. For those that put it as an idea, I wouldn't necessarily say you were wrong, in that ideas are a bucket for things you're going to work through discovery and validation. So if you've got like a really high level like idea, and you like, we definitely want to look at helping users report on team activity, and you want to gather feedback before you actually split out what those specific solutions would be, using an idea isn't a bad shout for that. You obviously do have the candidate cards as well on your roadmap to do the same. But yeah, this was definitely intended to highlight what could be used as an initiative. For objective, it's not really measurable. It's not really something, it's not a goal as such. If it was around, we want to increase the usage of our reporting functionality by like 75% or something, yes, probably maybe that is could be an objective. But
cool. For the third one, increase signups. 69% said objective, 15% said initiative, and 15% said idea.
Cool. Yeah, this was definitely intended to be an objective. Obviously, you know, combined with the key result, or you might even have in the objective itself, by how much do you want to increase your signups? It's not really a problem you're trying to solve, unless it was like signups are declining maybe, or you want, you know, it could be an initiative, but it not probably as it is phrased there. Yeah, any Wes, and I, as I said at the start, this is very nuanced, and it really does depend, as with everything in product management, it depends. But yeah, just we've tried to make it so that something can stick into your head as to like how to think about the different levels. But Wes and Andrew, do you have any other comments on these?
No, I don't think so. I actually think in the interest of time, we might consider just jumping to some of the questions that have been raised.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, if anyone wants any more examples, we did just officially launch the sandbox yesterday. So there are a ton of examples there for, you know, different ways of phrasing objectives and initiatives, depending on the column they're on, as well as ideas. Cool. In terms of Q&A, we have one question right now, and please don't be shy. Ask your questions, or if you want to actually join us on stage and want to speak, we can also do that. So the first question is, when talking with internal teams, do you feel a combination of key ideas is the ideal roadmap rather than taking time to research deeply into an individual problem? Ultimately, they are concerned about spending too much time researching when they are hearing multiple requests for the same feature. Any ideas in transitioning to problem-focused road mapping given this type of culture?
Yeah, my thoughts on this, it's obviously a struggle and a challenge, because most often you are going to get multiple requests for the same feature. But the communication to stakeholders should be centered around like making sure that we are finding out the right problem to solve for that. Like that feature, there's a underlying reason why they might be asking for a feature, when they think that they're experiencing a problem, and then they think, oh, if they had this feature, I could solve that problem. However, your development team is very innovative and understands how there might be opportunities to solve it in a much more elegant or even faster way, but your customers won't know that level of detail. They just know their own context. So being able to communicate that customers are giving us a solution that they want, but if you understand that problem, you can not only understand the impact of that problem, because they might tell you that they want a feature because it will save them 2 minutes in their day. But if you have a different problem that you aren't aware of that saves them 2 hours in their day, I'm sure they would love to have that feature instead, if you solve that problem. So it's actually going to solve your business problems and your customer problems better by truly diving into the depth of the problem.
Another thing I would add, which might help frame this differently to your team, is the amount of time that they spend potentially building the wrong thing that nobody uses is probably more than the time they're going to spend running that discovery and building the right thing. The first one puts you in a place where you're likely going to collect a lot of different types of debt, wasting time, and just building random stuff because people ask for it. Whereas when you're taking the time to run proper experimentation and research and all that, while it looks like you're spending more time on it, you're actually preventing building the wrong thing. So it's better for your team in the long run. Cool, so that one is answered. Thank you, Melissa. The next one is it possible for us to get this deck? Yes, we will actually be sending out the recording to this video. So no worries on that. And the next question is, do you have an ideal or approximate length a roadmap card should take? Interesting. Who wants to take that one?
So I definitely get asked this one a lot, and I think I can see where it comes from, especially because, we're all used to working in a very like projecty way and thinking that there is like a right way to do things and you're working in a very like linear fashion. ProdPad it's more strategic. It's going to be there for as long as it's there, and because it isn't just like an extension of your delivery plan, it is more focused around problems and the different ideas. There's not an ideal time. It does vary as well. Just to add, how often do you do releases? So if you release only 3 times a year versus like at ProdPad we release every week, your roadmap cards are going to stay in flux for varying times. So there isn't a right answer because obviously everyone has different sort of lengths of sprints and release cycles, but just bear in mind the build, measure, learn. Are you moving that card? You're doing the right discovery? Is it moving from later to next to now? And then are you making sure that you're moving it to completed and reviewing the success metrics and learning from that?
Emma, maybe if you go to the previous slide, which we can also send out as a follow-up resource, there's just some suggested activities and frequencies that depend on, as Emma was saying, the volume and frequency or your overall strategy on how often you would review and update things.
One thing that I would add, if it's helpful, is think about how many ideas you're adding to your card. If your card has, or your initiative has, 20 ideas, it's going to take longer. So my recommendation would be perhaps break it into phases. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, right? Phase 1 might be exploring one part of the problem. You might have, let's say 4 to 6 ideas there, and you can very quickly move through that discovery process that way. But if you're, relying on having, 20, I think the most I've seen is like over 50 ideas in a card. Obviously that's going to create a bit of a silo, and it's just going to take that much longer to get through it.
Before we take any more questions, if there are any, Andrew, would you mind just posting the final poll question? We'd really appreciate any feedback that you have on the session today. We will, as part of the follow-up, we will be pointing you to the roadmap clinics that Wes mentioned. So if you're still not too sure where to start, or maybe you start having a go at phrasing your roadmap initiatives around problems like we've highlighted today, but you kind of want to sense check it, feel free to book into the roadmap clinic and we can just talk you through it basically. But it'd be really helpful to know if this was useful, and feel free to add in the chat as well about any other topics you might want us to cover in the future.
Cool. Does anyone have questions? Oh, thank you for your feedback, Charlie. Does initiative equal roadmap card in ProdPad? Yes, it does. Yes. We will be very shortly changing the lingo in app. So anyone that is currently using ProdPad, over the next few weeks, you should be seeing the term card change to initiative, so that it all ties in together a little bit better. Someone is asking, someone gave some feedback, Charlie, actually, about the ProdPad hierarchy and how that actually links to the opportunity, problem, etc. Charlie, if it helps, I actually wrote a blog post around the opportunity solution tree and how things map back to ProdPad. So that might be an interesting one to look into.
And that slide actually, if I can go back to it.
Slide 20.
That's it. So in our glossary, which is where this is, you'll see at the bottom we do have it mapped to the different parts in ProdPad. It's a little bit more detailed than this. It goes into like candidate cars and so on, but that's in the, if you search for the glossary in the help center, you should find it.
Cool. As for live examples, Charlie, I would say you can actually see that in our sandbox. So our sandbox has quite a few examples there. And I know the team's going to try to make it a little bit more obvious so that you do have access to it and you can see what that looks like.
Yeah, if you go, I can show you now. If you switch to sandbox mode, you'll be able to see what Andrea just mentioned.
Will you stop called what will you stop tag? I don't understand this question about tags and initiatives. I don't know if anyone else in the team has access to the Q&A.
So sometimes if that's come from a conversation with us, sometimes depending on what you call initiatives, we might suggest different approaches of how to map that in ProdPad. So it might be that how your organization was the thing that the sort of item or area of work you were calling initiatives actually was maybe more like around what we would call themes, and actually you would want to use tags to be able to filter. We do appreciate that there is some confusion when we have these conversations, because ProdPad uses, you know, obviously we've got to pick a term and stick to it, but that's also why we have the glossary and the help center to try and help you to map what level your items map to in ProdPad. So that I'm guessing that's going to have come from a conversation with someone in the team. But let us know if I'm wrong and if that's actually written somewhere, and we should probably take a look.
Cool. I think that is it in terms of questions right now. So thank you everybody for joining today. Great sesh. Thank you for your questions. And of course, if you have any questions or any other ones, you can follow up by following ProdPad on Twitter or emailing success@prodpad.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.